Hello, and welcome back to the COVID Wellness Support Program. Today, in our 8th and final video, we will be talking about resilience. Specifically, we're going to talk about what resilience is. We're going to talk about different things that both strengthen and weaken resilience. We're going to discuss making meaning out of times of hardship. We're going to explore ways to build resilience. And we're going to discuss aspects of a balanced life and wellness. So to begin here, let's explore what resilience is. And in short, it's essentially the process of adapting through times of adversity, trauma, prolonged periods of stress like a pandemic. And it's not a trait that people either have or do not have, but rather it's something that involves behaviors and thoughts and actions that can be learned and fostered over time in anybody. So let's talk about some things that strengthen resilience. So first and foremost, we have optimism and hopefulness, right? So this idea that things are going to get better, right? That we're going to be okay, that we're going to make it through this time of hardship. A sense of humor goes a really long way. If we're able to enjoy life along the way despite it being challenging, this can definitely contribute to our own ability to build that resilience. A good support system is also crucial here. The more that we're able to share our experiences with loved ones and trusted individuals around us, the more supported and less alone we are going to feel through these times. As well as participation in recreational activities and hobbies. This serves a dual purpose. In addition to getting out and being social and maybe physically active, we get to actually build that support network further. Things like the ability to take on challenges and leave your comfort zone, right? During these times of hardship, it can feel really tough to want to take on new challenges or explore new options. However, the ability to kind of rise to that challenge, to explore new things, really helps foster that resiliency during these difficult times. Being able to create meaning, find meaning and purpose in life. And again, during these times of hardship, it can be difficult to find that drive, find what's fueling us going forward. But I'd encourage you, as we did in one of our previous videos, to explore the bigger picture, right? What are those things that are really important to you in life? What are your values? What are your long-term aspirations and goals? What are you hoping to be remembered for? Really exploring what you're able to pull from these difficult times that may contribute to your ability to make meaning and live a purposeful life. Self-compassion can also make a big difference. It's important to recognize that these are challenging times. To be kind to yourself and acknowledging that these are times that are asking a lot more of us than normal. So if we're not 100% all of the time, that's okay, right? If we're seeing maybe more of those fluctuations in mood, that's not uncommon. Giving yourself that room to be human and knowing that you are okay and perfectly allowed to do so. Giving yourself that love and compassion back. Making sure you get a good sleep, right? A bunch of these we've already touched on and it's all coming together here now. That sleep has an amazing ability to increase our distress tolerance, right? So we're better able to manage these prolonged periods of stress because we're more flexible and adaptive to mold and change as things change around us. And finally, we want to keep fit and safe. So making sure that we're physically able to cope with life as it changes. So staying active, whether it's through a recreational group or walking daily, making sure that we're allowing for that space to keep our physical form in shape so that we can adapt. Now, on the opposite side, we're going to talk about some things that weaken resilience. So first of all, maladaptive coping, right? So we've talked about this in a variety of contexts. We've talked about this in ways to not approach these difficult emotions that we have, right? By withdrawing or acting out, right? We've got better options. Ways of maybe not challenging our automatic thoughts, right? We want to be actively involved in our thought process and being in charge of what our mind and body are telling us. We also want to make sure that we're getting enough sleep so that we're able to handle that stress, right? All these pieces that mold together to help with our coping. And if we don't have those, that's what's going to lead to a weakened resiliency. We have a poor regulation of these negative emotions, so just like we just talked about. So instead of taking that positive action like we've discussed with some of these really hard emotions, we're withdrawing or we're acting out or we're avoiding altogether. A decreased participation in social, leisure, and recreational activities. Not only does this hurt things like physical fitness, but it pulls you away from that social support network, which is a piece that is so key during these times of increased stress. And lastly, poor self-care, right? Not getting enough sleep, minimal exercise, having a life imbalance. So this includes things like not having an appropriate work-life balance, right? Spending too much time in the workplace and not giving yourself enough opportunity to look after your self-care and enjoy life. In addition to all of this, I want to discuss making meaning out of hardship. We've talked about this briefly before, but essentially we want to be able to pull from our experiences, find a meaning from what we've gone through that's able to contribute to our bigger picture. And we have an incredible ability to grow from challenges, to grow out of adversity. Suffering, pain, and hardship have the potential to create new opportunities for us to grow and see things in a different way than we maybe hadn't before. They offer up different possibilities that may not have arose had we not gone through this time of hardship. So there is room for growth and positive change even during these times of hardship. And there's a really great quote from a man named Viktor Frankl who wrote A Man's Search for Meaning. And it says that when we're no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And this is really true in times like this, right? Where we have this pandemic and us alone as one individual person, it's really hard to change the situation that we're in, right? There's a lot of stress. There's a lot of increased tension and conflict in the world around us right now. And so in this situation, we need to go inwards. We have an opportunity to change ourselves, an opportunity to grow as a person, find new meaning and find new opportunities to continue on and do the best that we can to live a life that is filled with purpose. I would encourage all of you, if you're able, to take a look at this book. It's called A Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was actually a psychiatrist who was involved in the concentration camps as a Jewish man during World War II. And as a psychologist that went through this, he had a very unique ability to look at the process that people go through when they're in incredibly hard times, right? Where they have little to no control over their own lives, and how we can adapt as humans even during these incredible times of hardship to find meaning and grow from them. And one of the ways that we can move towards making meaning is by reflecting on the core values and strengths that we've gained from doing the work that we've done. And so in your case, I'd encourage you to reflect here for a moment on maybe what are some of these core strengths and values that you have developed through your experiences as a healthcare frontline worker. Some examples of these include things like leadership, humility, increased empathy or patience, right? There's so many things that life right now has required more from us in. And so whether it's we've learned that we are more patient or more compassionate than we knew that we were, or maybe we've increased our ability to remain calm during these times of stress, or we've had to adapt and be able to make better and harder decisions, things that we didn't know we were going to be able to handle until they were kind of thrown at us. So I just want you to take a moment and notice what your healthcare frontline experiences has exposed you to and what has become senses of value and core strengths of yours as a result. And with that, we're going to talk about some different ways, in addition to meaning making, that we can contribute to building resilience. So first and foremost, we want to focus on that social network. So we want to make connections with our family, our friends, our coworkers, even our clients and patients, right? Building that social connection, knowing that we're not in this alone can make a really big difference. Sharing both the ups and downs of these current experiences, right? It's not meant to be all roses and sunshines and butterflies all of the time. We can share in these relationships with the fact that this is hard. and have a common understanding and empathy towards one another. We want to avoid seeing these types of crises as an insurmountable problem, right? We don't want to get into that cycle of feeling helpless or hopeless. Instead, we want to see this as something that we're able to adapt to, right? It's a challenge. It's something we need to rise to. It's something that we can overcome. And it might not happen today or tomorrow or the next day, but it's something that with time we'll be able to move through. And a great way of reflecting on this is if you're able to take a look at your own life in the past. And I'm sure you've experienced other times of hardship before this current pandemic. And I want you to reflect on the fact that while you were maybe in that time of hardship, it maybe felt like it was never going to end. Great examples of this are things like the sadness you might experience after going through a breakup or a divorce, right? Losing somebody close to you, the grief that goes along with that. And yes, there are pieces of that might remain, but we were able to move through it, right? It didn't last for forever. That amazing, intense emotion, it dilutes with time. And so I want you to recall maybe a past experience where it felt like wherever you were, that's where you were going to be for forever. And notice the fact that you're not there anymore, that you came through that. And the exact same thing can happen again. And I want you to accept that change is a part of life. I know for myself personally, I love knowing what's going to happen. I love having the same routine. But unfortunately, life has other plans, right? It's unpredictable. It changes. People come in and out of our lives. And so knowing and accepting that that's going to happen helps increase resilience. The more flexibility we have, the more adaptable we're able to be, the easier it's going to be during these difficult times. We also want to keep moving towards our goals, right? Life doesn't just stop because it gets hard. We're actually able to take maybe some of these strengths that we're gaining through these times of hardship to be able to move ourselves forward, right? So if we've learned that we actually have the power to make harder decisions and maybe even work harder than we did before because of the pandemic, we can take those same principles and apply those to our personal goals. We can start making more effective decisions. We can put more time or energy into it because now we know that we can. We have that resource. And looking for opportunities of self-discovery and growth, right? Seeing where it is, where these challenges have shown up for you, see whether there's an opportunity for you to grow more in an area. See whether you need to maybe pursue further training or pursue further assistance in the mental health realm. Look for these opportunities for personal betterment through these hardships. We also want you to nurture a positive view of yourself, and this goes along with that self-compassion piece that we talked about. Know that these are challenging times, and just because the outside world is hard right now, and maybe you're struggling to keep up with it, know that that doesn't mean anything bad on you, right? This is a challenging time, and you are strong for showing up on a daily basis and continuing to fight through this. So making sure we're speaking to ourselves kindly, that we view ourselves favorably, that even if we slip and stumble on our way towards our goals, that we're still making the change we're wanting to, okay? We're still going in the right direction. And we want to keep things in perspective, right? It's really easy to catastrophize during these times, right? Things are never going to change. They're never going to get better. I'm never going to get to travel again, right? Whatever that is for you. We want to keep things in perspective, right? And even through this pandemic, we've already seen that that's actually started to shift and change, and there's all kinds of things that mold and adapt as life goes on. And that's the wonderful part of the fact that life changes, right? That we experience change so regularly, is it's pretty rare that anything's set in stone. So we can't really catastrophize because we don't even really know what the future is going to hold. Take care of yourself. Make sure you're giving yourself the opportunity to rest, recover, be active, and be social, okay? Making sure that you're meeting all of these basic needs. And lastly, maintaining that hopeful outlook, knowing that this is something that we can come over, that things are going to get better, and that you're going to continue to improve and mold and change and become the version of yourself that you're intended to be. Another key piece of building resilience is making sure we have the opportunity to pursue self-care. This is a really important component of looking after yourself. So first and foremost, we want to make sure that we have time each day that's just for ourselves. And I understand that this might seem like an impossible task if you have a ton of different responsibilities, especially if you're a parent, you've got kids, you've got a family member that needs help, you've got a job. But with this, it's really important to carve out that time. And this could be even a shower where you spend, 5 minutes in the shower that's just that time for yourself. Or maybe on your commute home, you spend 2 extra minutes just sitting in the driveway, just listening to your favorite song on the radio. Either way, we just want to make sure that we're carving out these little chunks of time that are just yours. We also want to make sure that we're able to go for a walk and practice things like mindfulness. So going on a walk and you're trying to be mindful, this involves things like staying in the present moment. So we can use our senses as we have before to do that. So on this walk, paying extra attention to the details visually that are around you, right? It's not just that there's a tree. What color is that tree? How old is that tree? What are the actual colors of the leaves right now? Okay, taking a look at the ground. How wet or dry is it? What's the texture of the sidewalk or the road that you're walking on? Making sure that we're listening for those auditory cues, okay? What are the sounds around us? Are there birds? Is there traffic? Is there someone else talking? Can we hear the radio on in somebody else's house? The buzz of the electricity line. Noticing the smells as well. Noticing, is there that fresh cut grass, or maybe it recently rained, or maybe it's dry and we can smell the dust in the air. Being mindful and intentional with our actions. Practicing things like meditation, right? You can follow a guided meditation or just finding that quiet moment to yourself where you're just going to focus on your breathing. Practicing bringing your attention only to that. And if your mind wanders, just calmly asking it to come back. Eating healthy foods and staying hydrated, right? Our body does its best when it's fueled and well-maintained. And this includes, it does it best with our mental health as well. We need to give our body and brain and mind the fuel to be able to help us through. And engaging in activities like yoga, right? This can be a traditional yoga practice. This can be a trauma-informed yoga practice. Whatever is going to work for you, but again, it's just another wonderful way of practicing self-care and staying in this present moment. If you have children, in terms of practicing self-care, you can do things like prioritizing getting them to bed at a good time so that you're able to have time for yourself before you go to bed. You can also keep a good sleep routine by establishing a relaxing bedtime routine for yourself. And if you have a spouse or a significant other, make sure to connect with them and make that a priority at least once a week to spend that time together. So as a daily routine, here are some small things that you can bring in right away that can help make a big difference in your own ability to manage the stress and build resiliency through these times. So start your day with a meditation or relaxation, right? Right out the gate, you can do some breathing exercises. You can listen to a guided meditation. And we're only asking for 5 minutes here. It can be a brief thing that helps you wake up in the morning. Engage throughout the day in some form of exercise for only 15 minutes, right? We're trying to make this a small, manageable piece. And maybe this is just a walk at lunchtime, right? It can be indoors or outdoors. But doing something active and something good for your body that way. Again, making sure we're eating those fruits and veggies and drinking lots of water throughout the day, and spending a few minutes just connecting with others. This can be making sure that you ask a colleague how their day is going or how their weekend was. In your healthcare professions, depending on your clientele, making sure you're spending time with them, maybe connecting with them. Having that me time like we talked about. So even if it's just a few minutes, but if you can get up to 15, that's great. 15 minutes where you're able to read a bit of a book you've been trying to, or listen to music, or engage in another hobby that you enjoy doing. And then making sure we have that regular bedtime and unwinding routine. And you can see all of these kind of compound together to touch on a variety of topics that we've explored over the last 8 sessions here. Again, small incremental changes that we're able to make that can start helping you feel better and feel like you're better able to cope during these times. And they really feed into this aspect of having a balanced life and what all feeds into that. So we have physical wellness, right? Making a conscious decision to be healthy on a daily basis. We have occupational and financial wellness, so finding a fulfilling career, maintaining that work-life balance that we talked about. Intellectual wellness. This is about being kind of open to experience and learning new things. Emotional wellness, so being able to be flexible and adapt emotionally to these challenging times. Social wellness, so connecting, getting to build that social network, enjoying time with others. And spiritual wellness, so discovering peace and harmony in meeting. This can have a religious context to it, but it does not have to. So, one way to assess how we're doing overall with these various aspects of a well-balanced life is by actually completing an exercise called the Wellness Wheel. Now, there's a few different ways that we can go about doing this. One, if you have the option to, please print off the wellness wheel itself. We're able to color in the wellness wheel, and it gives a nice visual example of where we're maybe doing really well and maybe where we need some more work. You can use colors to do this. You can use just a plain old pen, works just fine too. However, if you don't have access to this and you have access to the slides, you can print off the slides, and as we go through, I'll get you to just write a number down next to each question as we go through them together. Alternately, if you don't have access to either or a printer, that's okay. You can just grab a pen and a piece of paper, and as we go through these things, I'm going to get you to write down the question, and you're going to write down your number in response to it, just next to it. So what this is going to entail is I'm going to read you a series of statements here, and you're going to correspond by either coloring in the pie-shaped wedge that corresponds to that question on the wellness wheel, or you're going to write down the percentage next to the question, either on a lined piece of paper or on these printed out slides. And I want to clarify that in each question, we're asking what percentage of the time you do a given activity, okay? And it's going to make more sense as soon as we get started here, but if you do the activity 100% of the time, if you're coloring it in, you're going to fill in that entire wedge. You're going to color it all the way up. If you only do a given activity maybe 50 or 60% of the time, you're only going to fill in around half of that wedge. And if you're writing the number down, you're just going to write down 50 or 60, okay? And we're going to complete this for all 36 sections of the wellness wheel. So we're going to start here with physical wellness, which if you're using different colors is orange on our wellness wheel. And the first point here is that I maintain a balanced nutritional diet and reasonable weight for my height. So if you do this all of the time, you would give yourself 100% and you would fill in that wedge the whole way. If you do this about half of the time, fill it in about halfway, or you can write 50% down next to this question. The next one is, I drink an adequate amount of water daily to hydrate my body. Again, do you do this all of the time, some of the time, none of the time? It's important to note that this wheel is just for you. You don't have to show anybody. So I encourage you to be as honest as you can here. The next one is, I exercise at least 3 times per week. 4 is I pace my activity so as to not exacerbate pain and tension, such as shifting positions throughout the day, asking for help, or scaling my activities. Question 5 is, I am not reliant on alcohol, cigarettes, or illegal drugs. 6, I see my family physician as needed, such as for an annual checkup or blood work. All right, moving forward from physical wellness into that occupational and financial wellness. If you're changing colors, this section is now yellow. Otherwise, just continue with what you've been doing. So number 7, I pace myself at work by keeping on top of things, taking breaks, and delegating where I can. Again, as a reminder, if you do this some of the time, maybe you're in that 30 to 60% range, so filling in around that half mark of the wellness wheel. If you do this all the time, filling in that entire wedge, or just writing the percentage of the time that you do that down next to the question. Number 8, I have a balance between work and the other areas in my life. Number 9, I try to learn from my mistakes and contribute meaningfully at work. 10, I enjoy the work I do and the colleagues I work with. 11, I balance between present spending habits and future saving needs. 12, I have a financial plan for the future and retirement. Now, moving on from occupational and financial wellness, we're going to talk about intellectual wellness. If you're changing colors, this section is now blue. So number 13, I pursue mentally stimulating interests or hobbies and am open-minded to lifelong learning. 14, I am generally satisfied with my education and career path. 15, I commit time and energy to professional and self-development. 16, I have specific intellectual goals, such as learning a new skill. 17, I learn from both positive and negative experiences. 18, I rethink old beliefs and habits that are not serving me well. 'We're going to move on now from intellectual to emotional wellness. And if you're changing colors, this one is now red. Number 19, I have a sense of fun, laughter, and joy. 20, I am able to feel, recognize, and label my emotions. 21, I am able to comfort or console myself when I am distressed. 22, I have a sense of control in my life, and I am able to adapt to change as needed. 23, I am able to express my feelings in an appropriate way. 24, others would describe me as emotionally stable. 'We're going to move on from emotional wellness to social wellness. If you're changing colors, this section is now green. 25, I am aware of the feelings of others and respond appropriately. 26, 26. I am aware and able to set and respect my own boundaries and those of others. 27. I am able to resolve conflict with others. 28. I have at least 3 people with whom I have a trusting and close relationship. 29. I have a sense of belonging and do not feel isolated. 30. I have satisfying social interactions with others. We are now going to move on from social wellness to spiritual wellness. And if you're changing colors, this one is purple. 31 is I have a general sense of serenity. 32. I practice meditation, pray, or engage in some form of personal growth practice. 33. I have a sense of meaning and purpose in my life. 34. I trust others and am able to forgive others and myself for mistakes made and then let them go. 35. I have morals that guide my behavior and life. 36. I am hopeful about the future, that my pain and suffering will lessen, and that life will improve. 'So bringing it all together, now that we've completed this wellness wheel, I want you to take a moment and just reflect on the wheel itself, or take a look at the different percentages that you've written down next to the questions. I want you to notice a couple things. See if there's somewhere that sticks out to you that you're maybe doing really well. Maybe you're doing better in a given area than you thought you were. And the other side is also true. I want you to take a look and see if there's somewhere that maybe you thought you were doing well in and maybe you could use some improvement in. What stands out to you as a priority? And I want to clarify that the priority here might not be the section that you're potentially doing the least amount in, right? The most of the lowest scores. If that's not a priority to you, that's okay. The purpose of this is just to give you a snapshot of maybe how you're doing in these different respective areas. And if there's one that stands out in an area that you would like to do better in, make that a priority for yourself. And also, in reflecting on this wellness wheel, we're going to bring it all the way back to the mental health continuum model that we talked about at the very beginning. So we've been through these 8 different models, we've explored different aspects of mental health and mental wellness, and my hope is that you have a better feel for both how you're functioning and maybe some coping skills that you can bring in to function better in these different areas. But I want to bring this back now that we have a better understanding, a better vocabulary of these types of things, to see again and check in where we're maybe falling on this mental health continuum model. So as a reminder here, healthy in that green area, this is where we're able to handle what life is throwing at us. Yes, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be times that might be harder than others. But generally speaking, in this area, we're able to be flexible. We're able to adapt to what comes to us. And so in this time, we often have things like a good sense of humor. We're able to concentrate on what we need, right? We're seeing normal sleep patterns, regular exercise. We're performing well at work. We're socializing. Then if you remember, as we slide along the continuum model here and we move into that reacting phase, this is where things start to feel a little bit off, okay? We're not quite ourselves at this point in time. So maybe we're seeing a bit of increased nervousness, sadness, right? We're starting to see maybe those offhand comments, a little bit of sarcasm here and there. Some intrusive thoughts might be coming in. Those automatic thoughts might start coming up for us. It might be impacting things like our sleep. We might be wanting a little bit more alone time, right? At work, we might be procrastinating a little bit more, okay? We're starting to see increased reliance on some addictive behaviors, things like increased alcohol or drug use or gambling. And if we continue on the spectrum here into the injured range, this is where we see a bigger magnification of these problems. This is where we'll see things like anger and anxiety, a negative attitude, right? We're having more regular sleep issues, restless sleep, trouble attending work, right? We're starting to see potential weight gain or weight loss at this point in time, and increased trouble with substance use. And finally, if we move all the way into this illness realm, this is where we're seeing full anxiety and panic, anger, depression. We're not able to cope with the day-to-day life, right? We're getting dragged down by all of these things. Our sleep is regularly disturbed. We're withdrawing from our social activities altogether. We cannot perform our work duties. We're seeing increased things like addiction at this point in time. And it's important to note where we are on this continuum so we have an idea of what we need to do. And we have some specific coping skills dependent on where you're falling on this continuum. So if we're in that green, healthy realm, right, some actions we can take is that we can keep focusing at the task at hand. We're breaking problems into smaller, manageable pieces. We're regularly engaging in that controlled, deep breathing. And we're having a social support system that we're regularly nurturing and taking part in. If we're starting to sway into that reacting section, this is where we need to be starting to recognize our limits, giving ourselves more room to take those breaks, to engage in that self-care activities, whether it's rest, food, exercise, right? We're looking to be able to identify some of these kind of early warning signs, like these intrusive thoughts, right? Maybe we're having more of those come up and we need to start challenging them more. And we need to make sure that we're reducing barriers to seeking help. So maybe in this case, we're talking and reaching out to a loved one, a trusted, close individual, where we can share the fact that we're struggling. Once we hit that injured section, this is where we need to start looking at pursuing additional help, right? We need to talk to somebody, we need to ask for help, we need to reach out to a mental health resource. We need to tune into our own signs of distress and start gaining some clarity on what's going on, what is it that we're experiencing and feeling, what is maybe the source of some of this distress. We're making self-care a priority, we're carving out that time for ourselves, we're looking at getting help sooner rather than later, and we're maintaining social contact. We're not withdrawing, we're staying involved in our social network. And lastly, if we hit that illness realm, hopefully at this point we've already pursued help. So at this point we're following the care instructions that we've been provided by a mental health professional or a family doctor. We're seeking additional help as needed. We're respecting confidentiality for ourselves, making sure we know what our own boundaries are. And we're knowing what our resources are, whether it's a mental health resource, a social resource, a resource at work, and knowing how to access them. So in reflection of where you are currently on that mental health continuum model, and taking a look at what some of the specific action plans should be depending on where you're currently falling, I want us to take a moment and make a goal for yourself moving forward. So we're going to review the concept of a SMART goal to make sure that we're making a goal that makes sense for you and is something that's achievable. So in terms of the acronym for a SMART goal, first and foremost, we want this goal to be specific. So just saying something like, well, I want to feel better emotionally, that's too broad, okay? We want something specific. So instead of maybe I want to feel better emotionally, maybe one of the things that will help us feel better emotionally is something like increasing our social support. But even then, we want it to be specific. So what does increasing emotional support look like for you? Well, if right now, maybe we're not connecting with any of our friends or haven't over the last little while, let's make that a specific goal. So I would like to start seeing one friend per week, okay? We want it to be measurable, so making sure that we're actually hitting this goal. So having a number involved is really helpful. So again, that one social meeting, I'm going to see or maybe call one friend per week, right? We can measure that, we can see if we're doing it. We want this goal to be attainable, right? So it can be really enticing when we're all encouraged and excited and motivated to move forward, that we give ourselves these really big goals, right? We could jump off the deep end and say, I'm going to call all of my friends over the next week. That might not be attainable, right? We might not realistically have enough time to get through all of that. So we want to make sure it's an attainable goal. We want it to be realistic. So again, do we have time to actually fit this into our schedule? When are we going to fit it into our schedule? So I'm going to call a friend on Thursday evenings, right? Making it as realistic as possible because we know that Thursday evenings is when we have that time. And lastly, we want it to be time bound. So we don't want this reaching out for forever of, I'm going to call more friends, right? No, we want to assign a specific timeline to it. So in this case, I've given it a week. You can give yourself more or less time depending on what the goal is and depending what your own individual circumstances look like, but make sure that you are giving yourself a deadline to meet this goal by. And so with that in mind, I want you to think about, as a result of doing this entire program and doing the wellness wheel today, you are planning to strengthen your resilience by choosing to take part in the following action. And I'm going to get you to write down a goal. This can be on the back of the wellness wheel, on the bottom of the sheet that you are using, but I'm going to get you to write down a specific goal using the SMART goal principles. So take a moment. If you need to think about it, you can pause this video and then jump back in. Once you have this goal in mind, to increase your ability to do it, we like to increase the accountability piece. So I would encourage you to pick somebody that you're going to share this goal with and that can support you along the way. So again, I'm going to get you to write down that person that you're going to share this goal with. And I want you to come up with an idea in your mind of when you're going to talk to them about this goal. And you can make as many SMART goals as you like, depending on the number of different areas that you're wanting to see change in. I'd encourage you to continue to revisit this. Maybe give yourself one goal to start with, and then continue to add as you're able to start meeting these goals. I sincerely hope that you have at least learned something through these last 8 sessions that we've done together here. I am looking forward to you being able to move forward and grow and adapt through these challenging times. I sincerely wish you all of the best, and again encourage you to reach out for further mental health support should you be finding yourself in need. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.